Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sri Ram Kumar here, and I welcome you to the 92nd edition of TLRSHOWS, the flagship show of TLR Now. TLR Now, for the benefit of our viewers, is a niche training, mentoring, and coaching institution. We are based in Pune, India, and we have offices across the globe. It's a special day today here at TLR Now, and let me kind of take a little while to explain why. We have somebody special on our show, and as I was contemplating how to introduce him, there were two approaches I could take. One is I could say that he's an HR professional with more than 25 years of experience in a variety of industries. Or I could say that he's a trainer, he's a mentor, he's a coach, he's an OD interventionist. I could say that, he's a psychometric assessor. I could say that he is an extremely qualified individual with an executive education in ISB, an MBA in HR, etc. Or I could be very simple and say, today I have my friend Sanjay Devudu on the show. So I will choose the latter way of introducing my guest. And let me call upon the guest for today, my good friend Sanjay Devudu. Good evening, Sanjay, and welcome to TLRSHOWS.
Thank you, my friend Sri Ram. Absolute pleasure, and it's a privilege to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me here this evening.
Wonderful, wonderful, Sanjay. And viewers, as you might have seen our posts on social media, we will be talking about something that is very, very important in the current time. That is, how do we humanize HR? Please shoot in your questions, and I'm sure Sanjay will be more than happy to answer them. And as we progress with the show, there would be a lot of insights that would come up. So Sanjay, let's start at the beginning. HR professional, coach, mentor, OD interventionist, and you do OD interventions right across the entire HR life cycle, so to speak. As they say in Hyderabad, "Aisa kar lete bhai." How does all this happen? How do you wear so many hats?
So I think I should give a response in the Hyderabadi manner. Kya to bhi kare to kuch to bhi hota. So that's a very typical answer that happens. But yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a journey for sure, no doubt. And the fact that human behavior has always intrigued. And whether I'm at airports or my wife keeps saying, "Now you'll start your job," when we're sitting waiting for people at restaurants or airports or whatever. I just keep observing people going. I mean, what's going on in their mind? What is it that is occupying their mind space at the moment, or their movements, their face expressions, etc., etc. That's at a very very personal, informal level. But that's what intrigues me. And in a corporate setup, I think it has been very, very, very important and very helpful for me to build those relationships. Because my belief is, until it's all about people, it's all about humans. And by virtue of having built those relationships is where I have been able to hopefully add value wherever I have been. All the other things that come with it are necessary evils, as I may call it certifications or call it education, call it whatever. But the base foundation is the humans themselves. So that's where I come from. And even today, I believe that yes, qualifications, experience, certifications, all are very important. But at the end of the day, how do you connect? Like you rightly mentioned at the beginning of the show, how did you and I connect? We found something, some common ground, and we broke it.
Sure.
We broke the ice right there. Even within the first 90 seconds, we had broken ice, or even before that, when we met, exchange messages. So that's where I come from, and look at how can I help, and how can we make things better from a people perspective.
Sure. That's insightful, Sanjay. I think two things stand out for me from what you said. One is people first and relationships. I
Absolutely.
think these will never go out of style,
Exactly.
irrespective of the era or the industry that one is in. And if we may go back, Sanjay, a bit, I mean, you obviously mentioned your interest in people, etc. Did that trigger off this entire journey of yours in HR? I mean, were you like, I will make a career in HR, or is it something that happened along the way? Talk to us a bit about how it all started for you.
So it's a combination of things, and I'm going to be very, heart-to-heart answers here. No, no mollycoddled pink-colored answers, pink and rosy answers.
Sure.
Um, Started off with the intent of heading into the field of medicine. So various things didn't fall into place, and so the next best option that I had to consider of getting into. I was not interested in engineering. I was not interested in any of these sciences. The thing that struck me most was a lot of personal circumstances at the time gave rise to this thought to say, when I was talking to elders who were already working in the family, or my cousins who were elder to me, family basically, and friends. So what is it that is making so difficult for them? And these were the days when we had no internet, we had no computers, we had no cell phones, we had nothing basically. If you had to
Sure.
communicate with somebody, you dial in and wait for hours, or you go across to the person in person. Right?
Right.
So from those days, that is what intrigued me to say. So how is it that one maintains these kind of relationships? What is it that will help keep building? Where do we go from here? Was a thought which was very abstract at that point of time, but that's what triggered the whole interest. And then I said, yeah, I think this is where I probably will do well. And the other thing I must admit here was, without realizing it, until my mom pointed out to me one day, many years ago, if there was an issue or if there was something confusing any of my friends or even cousins for that matter, they would meet me and they would talk to me and say,
Mhm.
"Hey, we have this going on. So what do you think we should be doing?" So somewhere probably that relationship factor that I mentioned was a clue, and maybe also probably because they felt that I was a good listener, I would not talk when they were talking. So probably these were things which were somewhere there, which kind of manifested, and I didn't realize it until my mom was, "Why are all these people coming to you when they have so many elders in their house, or what is it?" I said, "Don't ask me, I don't know." So probably that also stemmed from there, and so then I ventured into the field of HR. That also did not happen in a manner which was uh, very well planned and structured and say this and this and this. Went in, started working, and by virtue of which the kind of relationships that got built up and the kind of for lack of a better word, I'll say calmness that prevailed in the environment around me, the work environment around me, is when
Mhm.
started building, and that's where I started taking up, more work and more learning in the field of HR, and then I completed my MBA and then moved on. So that's how the journey started, essentially.
Wonderful. Sure, sure. Sanjay, that's interesting. And I'm glad you were candid about, how the whole thing came about, right? I think there was a larger, there was a larger purpose, and there were many things that fell into place. And which kind of leads
True.
me to the next question, Sanjay. That as somebody who has seen probably close to 3 decades in the space, in the space of HR, as one calls it, how have you seen the practice evolve? From maybe the days when HR was purely around probably ensuring that salaries were paid on time, right?
Right.
And how have you seen the entire science of HR evolve over the last 2.5 to 3 decades? What would be the key, flashlights, highlights for you?
Great. So yes, you absolutely mentioned hit the nail on the head by stating that it was more of a, like they call this, a nail department. As long as your documentation is clear, the salary is paid, your sick leave is taken care of, your leave is taken care of, and things were done. But I must also candidly admit that even after all these years, some sectors continue to perceive that HR is only that. Some sectors. Thankfully, the way the industry has evolved, and we were just not exposed to anything in the services sector many years ago, about 20-25 years ago. Manufacturing was still the core, and there were very few, probably banking and some finance sectors which were there. But the emergence of the whole IT boom, the IT sector, and all those related ancillary sectors, like services mainly, um, has led to that differentiation in the way things are done. So one is primarily the expectation of the workforce is has changed over each generation. So earlier, the first set probably was to say stable job, a regular income, run the family, some savings, I'm good, right? I'm not really looking for anything big. And then aspirations started changing when our economy started opening up, when we started traveling a bit, even within the country, they started seeing that there is something different. People were not even moving out of their own cities to a
Sure.
large extent. So that expectation of I can do something more, I can do something better, I can do something different, start putting pressure on the system, I would say, to say people are not going to stick around for the next 30 years. So
Sure.
how did that evolve? So that led to an evolution of saying we need to train people better. We need to probably, compensate them better or compensate them differently. What kind of benefits will we offer, etc., etc. That was possibly the next phase. And then when the generation moved up, by then technology had taken over to an extent, and lots of other companies started coming in once the economy started opening up. So private sector was given the opportunity to participate in business sectors which were not open to them otherwise prior to that. So that led to competition happening, which means talent moving around, which means you had to retain talent if you wanted to really make a difference. If not, they would go. On the other side, all these new companies were looking for talent. So they started, poaching, if I may use the term, from other places because they would get experienced manpower. That push and pull factors, those push and pull factors, started putting the onus on HR to say, how do you handle your people better? What do we need to do to be able to retain them? So it was an external factor. And internally, because the talent was becoming, the workforce and talent was becoming more, how shall I say, setting higher expectations and looking for more and doing things differently. That started putting pressure within the system to say, if I don't, really do something good or something better, I'm off. So what did we need to do? Train people better, create different roles, and so on. So a combination of these factors has brought us to, if you ask me, in the last 10 years, has it really evolved? Other than technology, the way we handle people, we're still struggling. simply because the expectations have kept on increasing. The generational shift has been so drastic that you throw some extra money is not the only factor anymore. So we've evolved from being just a payroll servicer, so to speak, to trainer as an organization, to train our people, to now retention, and now we are moving on to say, what can we do for you to be able to retain them? So that's the kind of evolution that I have seen.
Wonderful. That's insightful, Sanjay. I think those are four distinct and clear phases that organizations and probably the HR practice along with it has gone through, and we have all been part of that in some way or the other. At least people of our generation, we've seen all those. We've been part of all these four phases. And as I reflect back on these four phases that you mentioned, Sanjay, one thing struck me that while so much has happened in terms of the evolution of the practice of HR itself, today we're still one of the biggest challenges that organizations probably globally are struggling with. And let's keep aside this entire COVID thing aside for a while. Even prior to that, organizations have been successively struggling with diminishing or decreasing levels of engagement of people at the workplace, and people not finding purpose in their work, etc. And any kind of report you pick up from many of the reputed agencies out there, the numbers are always reducing. Isn't it kind of ironical? Well, there is so much of being done on one hand, the engagement levels are going up, people's involvement is coming down. How do you see that, the dichotomy, so to speak?
Wonderful question. So I would go back to a point which I mentioned earlier. Like I said, the generational shift in expectations is becoming wider and more drastic by the day. Right? That's number one. Two is money is not the only factor. And like you rightly said, the pandemic situation as an exception. Otherwise, money is not the only factor. Purpose is the factor, right? The third aspect I would, bring to the fore is, for a long time, organizations took it for granted that people would build their lives around work. But the change now is that we are not interested in that anymore. We want to build work around our lives. So there's a huge difference. So what is it then that organizations need to do is one question, or have done. Second is the aspect of, is it truly your intent as an organization to do something, or is it lip service? Because even today, as a consultant, I work with different customers, helping enhance their HR function and portfolio by virtue of setting processes, streamlining processes, talking to employees, and trying to understand what is the culture and what needs to change, etc., etc. What I notice is that a lot of companies still talk to me saying, no, but that is not priority right now. What is not priority? Engagement. We're doing some engagement. What are you doing? Fun Friday, pizza party. We're still stuck in that era. And I'm talking new age organization. Whereas when I talk to the employees, when I talk to the people, they are asking me those questions to say, what next for us? Where is our career headed? That's where the pressure is on the system. That's the second aspect. And therefore, engagement of falling. Third is the fact that this whole, I just call it slave trading. Sorry for my French, but the way organizations are pitting talent against each other, pulling, pushing, it's become a marketplace, unfortunately. Business and numbers, it's profit over people continuously. When I hear of organizations making offers to candidates who are bright-eyed freshers who are looking up to make a career and already feeling proud that they're part of a particular brand, and suddenly they're told, it's deferred indefinitely. And then suddenly you call them one fine day and say, oh, no, we all want you on board. What level of commitment or engagement are you building? I'm not saying everybody, but many organizations are still struggling with that. The third aspect I would see is the leadership, right? Despite all that we speak about, like I said, I'm going to be very open-hearted with my answers and sound candid. I hope that's okay with you. But my point is, we talk so much on public forums. We espouse and expound theories on leadership. We do all that. But in reality, we are stuck in a colonial era still, where hierarchy, designation, a title, and that respect because of the title, not as a person, is demanded, not commanded. The moment that happens, and if I may digress for a moment, day before yesterday, I was in a meeting and somebody walked up, wanted to meet the person that I was sitting with. And so the response was to say, why do you want to talk to me? You have 2 layers of managers above you. So why don't you talk to them first to come to me? Over, period. The person will never come back. So I asked the person, I said, so what do you think is going to be the impact of this conversation on that individual? Nonchalant answer. So this is still a very big problem for us. So leadership is the other pillar which needs to really roll up their sleeve and come down to the level of, I don't mean it in a denigrating manner, but they need to come down to the level of ground reality and be able to help build that culture. A lot of these factors is what is causing. Of course, all the money, appraisal systems, etc., etc. Those are all more tactical, operational things which need to be taken care of. But at a strategic level, we are who we show people to be. And if we are unable to do that in a manner which is realistic. We talk something in a forum and then come back and do something different. The confidence level is never going to get built. I think so. These are 3-4 areas which are causing this pressure on engagement to continuously go down. And let me also be candid to say it's partly the fault of the HR teams as well. Because like I've kept telling my teams over the years, let's not look at it as just a job. Then we are making the same mistake as everyone else, right?
Sure.
There is an element of trust. There is an element of confidence that is put in us as HR professionals by employees to say, I think these are the people who will be able to help me get clarity and answers. You've missed that point. So case in point, I was interviewing a candidate for an interview for a HR position. And so I asked about engagement. I said, so can you please elaborate a bit on what you've done with employee engagement in that arena? And like I mentioned earlier, the pizza party thing, this was even worse. So the answer that came was, oh, we are a very open cultured organization. And we organize Valentine's Day events. And we have no objection if 2 people want to, be a couple in the office. I said, if that is your definition of engagement, or I thought to myself, if that is your only definition of engagement, I think we have a serious problem for your organization, not for you. So it has to expand. The thinking has to expand beyond that. Engagement doesn't mean just these parties. Yes, they're important. Definitely not denying them. But it goes beyond. Because you can only do it for 6 months and then people will get bored. What next? What next? What is different? So I think these are some of the facets. I know it was kind of a long-winded answer, but I hope that makes sense.
Sure, Sanjay. Thanks for that. I think it did, because the 3 or 4 areas that you touched upon were very relevant. Because I think today, as you rightly mentioned, most of the workforce, if we can, in a very generic way, call them that, are very, very focused on one thing, which is what is next.
Exactly.
What is in it for me, right? And this is something that I also hear when I work with my coaches. They said, "Boss, we need that." They come from a paradigm where they say, "Fine, we don't need something very concrete. We are okay with a little ambiguity, right?
Correct.
It can't be, X, Y, Z. Chalega. But कुछ तो clarity चाहिए. At least show us a path,
हाँ,
right?
क्या हो सकता है ये तो बोलो.
हाँ.
That is what they are asking for.
And then, right. So I think organizations, probably organizations and leaders, taking from what you said, need to be a little more comfortable and be kind of comfortable is the word, yeah, with being seen as fine. We are also equally ambiguous about it. Why don't we work it together?
Correct. Correct.
Right. And then probably all the elements of personalizations, individual specific, etc., could fall in place. That is my thought process.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
because
it has to start somewhere, right? So if we like, you can't be doing analysis of data and it becomes a paralysis of that analysis without any action.
Absolutely.
So start, stumble, act, refine, move on. But something you have to keep thinking of how things will change and what you can do further.
Sure. I think there's one word you use, Sanjay, which kind of brings me to my next question, and that is data. Right. So one thing that I have seen over the last 5 to 7 years, or probably 5 to 7 would be a fair estimate, is the absolute explosion of the use of data analytics and technology in the HR space, be it any area, right from sourcing of candidates to interviews to the entire right up to your compensation, exits, etc. There's so much of data, so much of analytics. All the HR folks are very dashing folks today because all they have is dashboards in front of them.
Well said.
So obviously there is I'm sure there is a lot of good stuff that comes out of this data, etc. But do you think we need to kind of balance this? Is too much? My own view is there is so much going on in this data, and technology stuff. Are we losing that human element in HR somewhere? Because end of the day, there is an individual sitting out there who leaves his or her family at home and then comes to work for an organization, do their might and go back to their place of work. So what is your take on that? Is there a balance, or do you think that data can be better used, or do you think it sometimes becomes a hurdle? What's your view on this?
Lovely question. So some time ago, I had written a little piece which was titled, "Where are the humans in the future of HR?" That was the title.
Sure.
Simply because there is a explosion, like you rightly said, of technology for HR, AI, ML, cloud-based systems, whatever you name it, it's all there. Fabulous. And I am a fan of technology too, no doubt. But the problem is, where do you draw the line using data which is pulled out from the technology? That's where the problem, in my opinion. Reason is, at the end of the day, while all your predictive analysis and analytics and artificial intelligence can tell you everything about how the person has it, my take is that can still be a fake to an extent. Like, there's no doubt. Number one. Two is, at the end of the day, who are you as a person? Do you smile? Yes, I can see your photo. You smile. You smile for the photo, but do you really smile when you're talking to people? Right? What is your communication style? Not in an interview, in real time. What is your way of dealing with a stressful situation? Again, not online, offline in reality. all this still doesn't go away, right? How do you build relationships? You can look at data. I can look at a huge set of reports for Sri Ram and say, okay, this is what he likes, and this is what he likes, and this is what he doesn't like, and so on and so forth. Great, fabulous. And I can deal with you in a very formal manner if I use that matrix and to say, yes, I did X, I did X. He looked like he smiled. I didn't do Y, so looks like he didn't like it, and so on. But at the end of the day, did we connect? We didn't.
Sure.
Talent decisions. You look at the entire experience of the person. What has been his or her performance rating? Why was that performance rating given? All that is absolutely fine. But there is something beyond that. There is something called that potential. There is something called that empathy factor. There is something called that leadership factor. So like I gave you the example of my own case when I was nowhere in close to being in the field of HR as a kid, as a teenager, when people were coming to me to ask for advice or opinion, right? What analysis of data would have told them that this fellow will be able to help us?
Sure.
Nothing. It is that comfort. It is that trust for some reason, or it is that confidence to say, looks like this guy, I'm okay with this guy. I think we're missing that element. So while technology is fantastic, we require it. I promote technology with a lot of my clients to say, listen, guys, just automate all your operational stuff, right? Processes, automate them, but don't automate people. Right? You can't sit in front of a person and say, I've looked at the data. Looks like you're on the brink. Means nothing to the person. To be able to explain why, how, what did the data tell you? Is it making sense? Is it logical? Therefore, that relationship factor comes back into play heavily. You can't mentor a person just because data said he or she can be mentored. You need to actually experience that and then say, whether this person can be mentored or not, or how can I change that person, etc. I think we are, to put it in a nutshell, I think we are overdoing it beyond the point, and therefore dehumanizing the whole function. In fact, though I'm from the same field, one company I work for, really, I like the way they didn't call it human resource. They called the function human relations. And I love that. Okay. So what they did or didn't do is all a different matter. But the fact that the right term was used was an enjoyable thing. See, that's where that no data would have given me that information. But it felt good to say, yes, they're using the right term. And then I did my best that I wanted to and could do within the organization. So we need to look at the human side. We need to remove that word resources and just retain humans. And that's where we are, I think, going slightly over the line.
That's interesting.
Just a completely abstract example, you and me call some service provider or whoever, and we're continuously for the first 3 or 4 minutes diverted by an IVR to some option or the other, right? Without still getting a response of what we want, an option of what we want. What is the feeling in our heart? It's all data. It's all data, no doubt. But we are craving for that human interaction to say, hey, this is my problem. Can you help me, please? That's exactly what it is with HR as well. That's my take.
Sure, Sanjay. I think a lot of insights there. I think if I can kind of summarize what you said, maybe it kind of supplements and complements decision making rather than get into replacing the decision and saying data ye bata raha hai. End of the day, I'm an employee, not a loan application form where you say, okay, your score is this, and then
True.
So I think that's an interesting dimension, Sanjay. And taking this forward, when we're talking of this entire paradigm shift that needs to happen. One thing that I have noticed, even when I was working or when I, had these discussions with my clients around, or coaches, uh, somewhere one gets the feeling that, HR is always in a catch-up mode.
Right.
It's firefighting most often. We are not getting, good talent to go train those people. Of course, there's another dimension that suddenly you train and somebody comes out, brilliant. That's also a challengeable, a debatable thing in itself. But
Right.
okay, fine. We are having a competency issue. Let us address that. We're having a hiring issue. Okay, let us just go and do final. So it's perennial firefighting HR. But most of the managers, even in the HR space, they confess, "Yaar, ye day-to-day maramari chal raha hai." Okay. Here I am. I want to be a kind of workforce advisor to the organization, to the CEO, probably even the board. And even today, I don't know how many organizations are represented. HR is represented at the board, even in big
Right.
organizations, I dare say.
True.
Caught up in this entire, engagement activities and pizza party, Valentine party, Rangoli party, and all that kind of stuff. How do you see HR work with business? What do you think HR actually needs to do so that they have that, the proverbial seat at the table where they are actually partnering with business, and it goes beyond this business partner designation, so to speak.
Right.
How do you think they can actually partner with business so that they are seen as a workforce advisor truly and align themselves to the business goals and actually add value to the people and to the fraternity itself?
Great question. So I think one of the biggest changes that still needs to come about. It has happened. The need to move. I don't deny that, but we're still far away from the ideal place where HR needs to take the responsibility. And when I mean HR, it's not just the head of HR, but each member of the HR team needs to take that responsibility to understand the business. I think that business acumen aspect is missing. Why? I go back to an earlier point I made, where we should stop looking at it as a job. My job is to hire people, right? You tell me how many numbers I need to hire and what roles I need to hire in, I will go hire. That's one. Second, if people are leaving, I checked with them, they've got more salary, they're going. Fine, you did your job. You did your job. That's where we are stopping at. But the difference comes in when, unfortunately, many HR folks also don't understand the business itself. What are we trying to achieve? What is the market? And I'm not saying every one of them, many of them. We are still in the majority in terms of being in the dark. That change needs to happen to be able to say, based on where we are in terms of our targets, what is the kind of challenge that our business is likely to face or facing already, and therefore what changes do we need to make in terms of our people, and here are a list of options that we could consider. I don't think there are very many HR folks who are even having that conversation. So I'll just give you a very interesting example from, I hope that's okay, we have some time, yeah. So
Sure.
one of the business leaders that I was working with as the HR lead, he asked me one day, he said, boss, apna logon ka training karana hai. I said, yeah, sure. So my first question is not what training. I said, why? So he said, why ka matlab? I said, but training karana hai, I agree, boss, but what for? Kyun? What is the objective behind the training? That opened up his mind, and he said, आज तक किसी ने मेरे को तुम HR वालों में से, I was 6 months old in the organization by the way. So आज तक किसी ने पूछा नहीं, ट्रेनिंग पूछा क्या ट्रेनिंग करना है, बोल दिया, वो करा दिया. I said, but usse fayda hua kya? Nothing. You really have not had, any benefit from that. So what's the whole point? So my point is that the challenge was not training at all.
Sure.
When I sat and had a discussion with him, the requirement was not training. The requirement was more to have conversations with people. Managers were not having conversations with their team. Feedbacks were far and few in between. Right? There was no discussion about the challenges that the field staff were facing with respect to their targets or what's happening in the market. Those were the issues that needed to be addressed. So when we spoke about it, and then I said, to do all that, fine. If there is a kick that they need to get out of some training, we'll do that to get things going. But before we get there, these are things that need to happen. So that was one side of the story. Then when I went back and finally got on to a discussion with a training partner, they immediately said, yeah, we'll be able to do. I said, you don't even know what is my problem. What will you do? Right? So, no, we have understood. You said you want to do team motivation. We have got this exercise. We have got this exercise. I said, excellent. Very good. Excellent. Shove all that aside. I'm going to talk for the next 20 minutes of what exactly is my challenge. And then you tell me what can you do. So I explained the entire business requirement of what is the challenge, where is the challenge, which areas, and how do we need to get these people together in different groups, where are the inter and intra-departmental challenges, etc. I'm still proud to say that, that organization came back and said, you know what, we've never had a conversation like this. We need 2 days to even assimilate, put something together, and came back. We did everything finally. But that is the level which everybody needs to take. We are not there yet. And a lot of people that I talk to, even in the HR fraternity, even today, is saying, when you ask for numbers and when you say, I'm not a very heavy numbers guy, but at least I should know the basics of the business. Right?
Sure.
They say, so what is your revenue target, or where are you today in terms of that target, etc. I think andaza approximately. When you look up and say that, the confidence is gone. Okay, so that's the change that needs to come about. We need to ask those questions of business. It may not relate to you, and there are also leaders who will say, why do you need that information? What is it? How is it relevant to you? That is the education we need to give them back, to say, until we understand that, we cannot talk confidently to whatever we need to do. And we are nowhere. Just because there is an open position, we don't want to reach it. Is there something different that we can do for that position within the existing talent? Those are the kind of informed decisions, logical, informed decisions that we can make with related to talent. And therefore, business acumen, I think, is critical. It is still missing in a big part.
Sure. I think that's insightful, Sanjay, and I could relate a lot of stuff that I went through during my career, right? And also a lot of those conversations I have had with clients and during my facilitation sessions. I think if I can say, there are 3 elements that, based on what you have done, if I can kind of quickly summarize. One is, I think alignment is very, very crucial.
Absolutely.
Right? And awareness. So being aligned and being alive to what is happening. So that's where that awareness comes. And third is, of course, taking action based on that.
Correct.
Right? Doing the right thing. Not, generally saying, "Acha training karna hai, to get people to stand up on some chair and say, I feel great." They will feel great for 2 minutes and then nothing happens. Monday morning, you go back, it is the same boss, it is the same email, it is the same targets.
Absolutely.
Nothing changes in life. So I think those are very, very crucial elements.
And it's coincidental that you used those words, because my question to my team generally used to be, what is the ACE? What is the level of ACE? Alignment, communication, and engagement.
Okay.
If those 3 are consistently high, I think we are on the good track. alignment to the business, communication with people, and engaging the business actively. When I mean business, people from all stakeholders within the business. So we will ace it when we are high on the ace factor.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's putting it very aptly, Sanjay. Moving on, while we have spoken about the people dimension, what organizations need to do, what leaders need to do, what managers need to do, etc. There's another dimension to it which one cannot deny, is that if we take the whole piece of leadership per se. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Today, as you also mentioned about 15, 20 minutes back, there is so much that is talked about in online, offline, God knows, maybe in the dark web also people talk about leadership. I don't know. There's so much
Correct.
spoken about leadership, about the kind of attributes, skills, qualities a leader needs to have, etc. Uh, I mean, I have had leaders who come up and say, "Yeah, it's not going to happen, boss. I mean, you expect me to be a superhuman. It's not going to happen,
True.
right?
True.
I will stick to what I need to do. मेरे को मेरा business करना है end of the day. Okay. So do you think sometimes as much as leadership is important, etc., we are also probably entered an era where there is too much of expectation from leadership per se, and it in a way becomes easy for me to say, okay, Sanjay did not do this, so I'm not doing this. Sanjay did not
Right.
greet me in the morning, so I am not engaged at work. Sanjay did not wish me, so I am not feeling enthusiastic. Do you think there is too much pushed on the leadership also? Is this a live challenge?
Yes and no, I would say. Reason is
Mhm.
it all depends on how leaders perceive their own position.
Mhm.
If the person, if the leader is completely driven by just business and numbers,
Mhm.
then relationships take a beating. Like usually, I'm not saying in all cases, but at the same time, that whole factor of how can I help to overcome a challenge? What can I do to help you do better? That empathy is where the challenge comes in, and that is the missing factor. And therefore, you hear a lot of emotional intelligence and empathy and all that these days. But that has always been the need,
Sure.
right? And think beyond just yourself. I think that's very important for leaders. So, like, small examples like I need a day's leave, kal chutti chahiye. Why? Never ask that why. Never ask that why. He said, sure, no problem. Everything under control that you can go on leave? Absolutely. Everything taken care of. Trust. Empower them. The moment we get into that why as leaders, that reticence comes in, that diffidence comes in to say, now he's going to put some hurdle in the way. So that whole distancing, and this is not social distancing by any way, but professional distancing between I am a leader and you are, you work for me, that has to break. Right? We are in it together, and that ability to so therefore you don't need to be a superhuman. All those theories, all those books, all those management jargon that is getting thrown at, wonderful. Lot to learn, lot to create posts out of, lot to speak about in forums. I love all that. Great, fine, excellent. But at the end of the day, what is the foundation? Are you empathetic? And the same X factor goes here also. Are you aligned with your team? And are they aligned with you in terms of what we need to do as together? How are you communicating? Performance appraisal is you did well, this is what it is, carry on. It goes way beyond that. What next factor we spoke about half an hour ago is a very, very rare conversation that leaders have. And engagement does not necessarily mean a monthly outing or a beer party or something like that. Engagement is the ability to sit and ask, how are things on the home front? All okay? All good? How are things on the work front? What can I do to help you do better? What can we do differently? I don't know. Can you help me? That humanizing leadership rather than titling it is the difference in my personal opinion. And that is where we are missing, and expectations and all the psychometric testing that we do, etc., puts a lot of pressure on say these are all the competencies, these are all the skills, and at each level, this is the level of skilling we require. All that is very, very important. But don't make it only that. Look at the person behind the data. That's my point.
Sure.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it did. I think these are means and not the end. Right?
Yeah,
Always a means and end distinction that one needs to be very, very, careful about. I think it's been a good discussion, and there are lots of insights coming. I have a few more questions, and I'm,
sure.
So the next thing I wanted to, kind of or talk to you and get your perspective was about continuing on this entire leadership thing.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see the leaders of tomorrow evolving in the whole sense? Yes, we spoke about empathy, we spoke about engagement, we spoke about trust, we spoke about communication, and how do you think leaders of the future, okay, and there are younger and younger leaders emerging nowadays,
Exactly.
how do you think they can how do you think they should in fact retain the focus on this? Okay, because today if I see young leaders and they're all over the place,
Right.
they have three the as I call them, there are three V's they are contending with. One is of course the visibility, right?
Okay.
Thanks to the
Right.
internet, social media, what have you, they're extremely visible. Second is, of course, the favorite of today, which is valuation. Okay, so that's another V that they're living with. And then, of course, the standard staple dal chawal VUCA that is there, the sheer uncertainty of the business environment. So, given
Right.
this entire visibility, valuation, and VUCA, monkeys on the back, so to speak, and also the realization that they need to be empathetic, they need to be aligned, etc. Not that people don't know these things, we all do. What would you think leaders actually need to be doing to kind of make it part of their routine, so to speak, right? How do leaders actually go about it? It is not that they don't know about it, it is not that they don't realize the importance of it, but it is like, yeah,
Yeah.
I can't do it every day.
Right.
So what
Right.
would your advice, so to say, to the young leaders out there? And this is not just the CXO kind. Even a young person who is now grown into, say, a team leader, managing a team of 4 or 5 people. Maybe today evening he or she will get a letter that says, a PDF file that says they are now promoted. How do they imbibe these into their workplace from tomorrow, in their work behavior from tomorrow?
Awesome.
What would
I
you?
think that's a tough one in the way that things are changing on a day-to-day basis. But I liked your we the analogy of valuation, visibility,
Visibility and
and VUCA, right?
yeah,
So I want to add another VC to that
sure.
for them to look beyond just venture capital, but make it values and culture. I think
Sure.
what's happening is everything is being driven by money. Right? Even if as an employee, the focus seems to be on how much, by when, what's my ESOP, and as a result of that, that whole value and all the frills are fine. What billiards tables and coffee machines and whatever else. All that is fine, gyms and entertainment. But what is your core value and culture that you want to build? Then I would continuously keep asking that question. So once again, with a client the other day, we were discussing the org structure and we were talking about, and they're very nimble in the last 6 years that they've been around. They're growing very quickly. So obviously they need more people, blah, blah, blah. So my point was, I simply asked the question of saying, you spoke about these 3-4 people as being excellent in their domain and their ability to manage customers and project implementations, etc., etc.
Sure.
How do you see them grow as leaders to be able to manage people better and in line with what you envision this organization to be 5 years from now or 3 years from now? 5 is too long a period in these days. 3 years from now, where do you see the organization, and do you see them being able to manage that kind of growth in terms of maturity, in terms of people management? What values do they bring? What is the kind of culture? Are they being the taskmasters or just the money masters, or they're saying a combination of both? Where do you see that? So the values and culture piece is what I would strongly advocate people to continue focus on. The other reason why I'm mentioning that also is what I'm continuously seeing when we talk to clients is, for the first 4 or 5 years, it's all about growing, running visibility, like you mentioned, building the brand, building the product, selling product or service, hiring people, getting them to work, giving them whatever they ask for in terms of food, money, all that. All the frills are there. But when they need to grow, when they're attracting new talent, is when they start facing trouble, and that's where we step in. So we're suddenly having trouble. I don't know, we are giving them everything, but we seem to be having a problem in getting the talent. Why? Because the priority has not been the people. The priority has been the business, which is great, no doubt. I'm not denying that at all, but not at the cost of people. That is what happens in the first few years. So right from the inception phase, so because the new talent were coming from better organizations, the bigger organizations, they're coming and asking those questions. So do you have what is my career map here? If you want me to join you, you're wooing me to come and join you. But what's my career map here? What is the kind of technology that you use if it's an IT company? What can I learn? What kind of learning, or do you have any in-house training facility, or do you have mentoring? Some talent is asking these questions, and even basic policies. Forget all these, even basic hygiene factors. So how much of leave do I get? Do I have flexibility in leave? Do I have to come in every day? These are all important for this generation. It's fine, but you haven't even put that taken into account, because you've never thought of building that kind of a culture. Saying we are open, no problem. Very, very few organizations have done that. So coming back to the core question that you asked, what I would advocate to the future leaders is focus on building the business, but not at the cost of people. Okay? Focus on valuation and customers, but not at the cost of values and culture. Focus on the hygiene factors right from the beginning, not at a stage when you're getting into trouble with those same hygiene factors. So these are 3 facets from a very fundamental human element that I would advocate to the future leaders.
Insightful, Sanjay. I think that's very insightful. And going back to what I said sometime back, these are not going to go out of style.
Exactly.
Right? These are not going to go out of style. That the size of the monitor may become bigger or smaller, and we may be on 5G, 7G, or 25G or whatever. But these basic human elements, they're not going to go out of style. And I think that's a lovely message to the leaders out there. And I'm sure those who are listening in, it will take a bit of time to kind of digest this. And it's not going to be an easy journey. Let's all be candid about it. It's not going to be an easy journey. But again, somewhere we need to start. And Sanjay, I think we're close to an hour now. And my last question to you, of course, this is less to do with the practice or the work that you do, or probably, it's ingrained in that also. And this is something that kind of got us together on social media, on LinkedIn specifically, was about, your interest in writing, storytelling, etc. As somebody who enjoys that, I just wanted to, hear from you. How did you develop an interest in this? And how does it actually help you? How has it helped you? Because you write amazing stuff. And those who are not following Sanjay on social media, please follow him. He's, by the way, nice guy. You send him a connection request, he will accept it. But
For sure.
please follow. Yeah. Please follow his writings. Please read up the stuff he writes. Amazing insights in very, very simple and concise and precise language. That's a skill, Sanjay, and it's wonderful to read this stuff. So, my question was, how did this whole interest in writing come about? How has it helped you in your work earlier and even presently?
Thank you so much for the kind words. I appreciate that. Simplicity, to keep the message simple, has been the core of the whole thing. But to go back to your question, I think it's somewhere in the DNA, Sri Ram. The reason is both sides of the family, fortunately for me, have been, my grandfathers both have been prolific writers. On the paternal side, a great literator, playwright, poet, storyteller, and so on. And had done, I mean, in Kannada literature, his name is like I avoid sharing my last name in Bangalore or in the Karnataka region for the simple reason that if I have 5 minutes to talk, it will take 60 minutes for them to finish. So it's that big a name. But yes, and one of his books also won Sahitya Academy Award, etc. So somewhere in the DNA that writing was there. On the maternal side, probably my grandfather again was a prolific writer on industry, on business, on commerce, etc. Way back in the 50s and 60s. And then somewhere it boiled down to my dad also. Kind of started from there. But more importantly, if you and I talk about human nature and messages that we want to give, we spoke about leadership, we spoke a lot of things now. If we expound theories, or when I hear of the topic of emotional intelligence, where we talk of all the hormones, the oxytocin, the serotonin, etc., how much of it do we retain 3 months down the line? If somebody tells us all those theories, right?
Sure.
Personally, at least, I won't remember everything. But today, you and I just raised the point of saying, do you remember the story of the hare and the tortoise, which we heard probably 50 years ago?
Sure.
Nobody would have forgotten the story. Nobody would forget the message as well. Right? That's the power of storytelling. Right?
Sure.
And therefore, the ability to retain the message and the essence of that story, or through a story, is far, far, far higher as I see it. And so therefore, that interest started to say, how do I communicate a message in the simplest of manner? Add a dash of humor there, bring in a story here, create that whole, all those hormonal activity that we're talking of in the brain. How do you create that without saying that you're doing it? Is through a story.
Yeah.
And that's where the whole interest started. And since then, started writing, and here I am.
Wonderful, interesting, Sanjay. Very, very, very insightful. Also, I think what you said was absolutely spot on. How do we keep it simple? How do we keep it relevant? Right.
Relevant.
And how do we keep it long lasting? Because it's something that needs to come about. It's something we need to kind of recollect. So I think those are it's a very simple framework that you spoke about. That is very deep in what it seeks to communicate. And yes, folks, again, I'm reiterating, please follow this gentleman. There's a lot to learn, not just about what he says, but the way he writes and the way he conveys the
Thank
message.
you.
And this, if I can just take about 45 seconds here, this is a very important skill, and it is going to increase in importance, because one of the biggest things that's going to happen in the days to come as we move to this digital or hybrid world is written communication is going to increase more and more.
Absolutely.
It's going to increase more and more. Today, so much of us spend time on WhatsApp, so much of our time is spent on Slack, so much time is spent on chats and Teams meetings. So what we write has gone up exponentially in the last 1.5 years.
True.
And for leaders and managers out there is such an impression that we create through what we write. So that's going to be an incredible differentiator in our careers in the years to come. And yes, of course, is a skill. It will be wonderful to develop that. So on that note, Sanjay, thank you so much for your time. It was an extremely insightful discussion. And thanks again for making it on TLR shows, and for all the insights that you shared. Audience, thank you so much for being with us on this shows. TLR shows is part of our endeavor, and we've been fortunate enough, thanks to your support. We are on our 92nd show, and trust me, this is just the beginning. It is our sincere and honest attempt to get leaders from various dimensions on this platform to share their insights with you. There is more that is going to come up in the weeks to come. Do keep in touch and do follow us on social media. We are on LinkedIn, we are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. And do keep in touch. Do shoot in your questions. Do connect with us on these platforms. And stay safe. And have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Take care and God bless you. Thanks, Sanjay.
Thank you so much, Sri Ram. Absolute pleasure and privilege to have been here. And sincere thanks to the audience for their patiently listening in. And we'll stay in touch. Thank you. Take care. Stay safe.